Okay, guys, I want to give you today a book review of a book that I have read, Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer. This is a memory book in essence. Josh is a friend of mine. He's somebody I know. I will say that up front. He also likes baseball. He's a Washington Nationals fan, and I'm a baseball fan, so we have that in common. Josh is the 2006 USA Memory Champion, and he wrote this book, Moonwalking with Einstein. It's definitely the best-selling memory book, at least in the last few decades. Harry Lorraine's The Memory Book has no doubt sold more copies, but they're two different books. I'm going to give you different styles of books as well. I'm going to give you a book review on this, on what I think of the book, but I will say up front, I think you should buy it, and I think you should read it. It is a good book. It's a well-written book, and Joshua Foer is a good guy, and this book has brought a lot into the sport of memory. Now, first of all, how I heard about this book. I was the 2009 and 2010 USA Memory Champion. Josh competed in 2006. In 2006, I didn't even compete. He was a journalist, or he is a journalist, and he went to the 2005 USA Memory Championships simply to write a story, an article about the championships. And at that championships, he met a guy named Ed Cooke. Ed is a guy who performs at a very high level in the memory sports community, the World Memory Championships, that kind of thing. So Josh goes there as a journalist. He went there to write an article about the USA Memory Championships. Ed Cooke and others convinced him that he should compete, and they convinced him on the premise that anybody can do this. It doesn't take a natural genius or a savant or anything like that to memorize. So in essence, Ed Cooke became Joshua Foer's coach, and he writes about that in this book. The way Josh found out about the USA Memory Championships is he started out to look for the world's smartest man. And he was Googling around trying to find the world's smartest man, and he found Ben Pridmore, who is a world memory champion. And Ben Pridmore's a genius, but does that mean he's the world's smartest man? Who knows? Okay, that's a pretty hard thing to tell. But that's how Josh got introduced to the memory tournaments. It started out, I'm going to find the world's smartest man, and then he goes to the USA Memory Championships to write an article on it, and turns out that he wants to compete. So he trains for the entire year, and he competes in the 2006 USA Memory Championship. And he won the USA Memory Championship as a journalist there just to write a story about it. And it's a great book. You know, he talks about, this is an autographed copy, by the way. So I got an autographed copy from him. But he talks, this is not a memory training book. If you want a book on how to memorize, this is not it. This is more of a philosophical book. Now, with that said, you are going to get some memory techniques in here. He describes the memory palace or the mind palace. But this is a philosophical book. He interviews people with really good memories. He interviews somebody with terrible amnesia. So it's kind of a philosophical book in that way, but it's also a story about a journey. Now, I want to say this. When I heard about Josh, I heard a lot of negative things from him, about him. From 2006 to 2011, roughly when the book came out, in that 5-year period, a lot of the people in the memory community, or not a lot, some in the memory community were saying that he was a little arrogant or snobby or condescending. And I didn't really know why they were saying that, especially after I met him, because he seemed like such a nice guy. But then I started reading the book, and I do know where they got that from, and I've heard some of his speeches too. In his speeches, he will refer to the nerds with varying degrees of hygiene, So I mean, it's kind of a slap at the nerds, varying degrees of hygiene. At the end of the book, he talks about a conversation with Gunther Karsten, who is world-renowned and very well respected in the memory world. And Gunther asks Josh, in the book there's this conversation, and Gunther asks Josh, are you going to continue to compete? Josh says, no, I'm not. I'm going to do other things. And Gunther says, yeah, there's probably better things you could do with your time than train for memory tournaments. And then in the book, Josh writes, I wonder why he never realized that about himself. So I think that's where the condescending part comes in, from some in the memory community. Thought Josh was condescending and arrogant, snobby because of the comments. Because who wants to be called a nerd? With that said, I give memory speeches all around the world, and I do make jokes. I say, these guys live in their mother's basement, play Dungeons and Dragons, and have invisible girlfriends. It's a joke about nerds. I do it for humor reasons. I certainly don't mean it. And I think that's all Josh was doing, just humor to play to a stereotype. He's trying to play to a stereotype, which is what I'm doing. And I think he's a good guy. But in this book, you're going to hear about some of my friends, Ram Coley, Chester Santos, Scott Hagwood. They're all former memory champions. He talks about, one of the interesting things he talks in this book is about plateaus. About how when we are training for something, we will reach a plateau and then we can't get higher. And he talks about some real scientific research about how you can move past your plateau and how you can get better and better. And he correlates it to speed typing. People can sit at a computer and type all day but never get better unless they do certain things like forcing themselves to go faster than they think is possible. And that's one thing he writes in this book. He references typing in this book. But he talks about a lot of the psychological things. He talks about his training with his coach and then his travels. So this is not a how-to. This is not going to teach you how to memorize. You will get memory tips out of it, and I do recommend it because it's interesting. A lot of people, Alex Mullen, the current world memory champion and USA memory champion, heard about the memory sports because of this book. I will say this, after the book came out, one of my friends who was critical of Josh texted me and said, I just read the book. I hate to admit it, but it was really good. And it is really good. Part of the criticism of Josh from the memory community was probably the nerd references, but probably a bigger part of the criticism was he got well over $1 million for this book, and so it might have been a little bit of jealousy too. Who knows? But it's well written. It's a great book. It's probably the best memory book, and it's not just the best memory book because he got paid a big payday for it. It's a really, really good book. If you know a lot about memory, read this book. If you know nothing about memory, read this book. The link below to buy it is in the comments to this video. It's not an affiliate link. I am recommending you buy this book not for my profit, but because I think it could help you. So go check out this book, Moonwalking with Einstein. Oh, by the way, one last thing. Joshua Foer in this book wrote how he memorized a deck of cards, set the timer down, memorized it in 1 minute and 40 seconds, and after he memorized it, he was like, oh my God, I just broke a USA record. He did. He broke a USA record for the fastest to memorize a deck of cards at 1 minute and 40 seconds. He did that in 2006. That record stood for 3 years until I broke it in 2009. So I broke Joshua Foer's record at 1 minute and 27 seconds. That record has been broken multiple times since then. Nelson Dellis was the first to break my record, and then Nelson Dellis's record was broken a few times, sometimes in the exact same tournament, so only the fastest time at that tournament was recorded as the record. The current record holder is Lance T-Shirt, the USA record. I think maybe Alex holds it. I don't know. That's something I need to investigate. But great book. Go get this book, Moonwalking with Einstein, a great memory training book. Check it out.